You didn't choose to be born into this world. You didn't choose the language hardwired into your brain, the borders drawn around your country, or the calendar that tells you what year it is. You inherited all of it. And here's the part nobody tells you. The people who built it didn't really choose it either. What if everything you call civilization, the cities, the laws, the religions, the economies, what if none of it was designed? What if it all just happened? Not by genius, not by destiny, but by accident. The real answer is far stranger than you think. Start here. Around 10,000 years ago, somewhere in a narrow strip of land between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, a few groups of humans made a decision that would reshape the entire species. They stopped moving. They planted seeds. They waited. Historians call this the agricultural revolution, and it is almost universally taught as progress, as the great leap forward. But paleoanthropologist Richard Wrangham at Harvard has spent decades studying what actually happened to human bodies during this transition, and his findings are unsettling. You got shorter. Your bones got thinner. Your teeth began to rot. Infectious disease, nearly absent in mobile hunter-gatherer bands, exploded. The average lifespan dropped. Farming wasn't chosen because it was better. It was stumbled into. Climate shifted. Megafauna disappeared. Wild food sources grew unreliable. And so your ancestors tried something new, not because they planned a civilization, but because they were desperate. That accident set every other accident in motion. Once you farm, you produce surplus. Once you have surplus, you need storage. Once you need storage, you need accounting. Once you need accounting, you invent writing. Not to record history or tell stories, but to track grain. The oldest known written documents on Earth, the clay tablets of Sumeria, are receipts. Inventory logs, the gift of literacy, the foundation of human knowledge, was born from a warehouse spreadsheet. Historian Yuval Noah Harari has argued that the real engine of civilization isn't technology or religion, it's shared fiction. Money is fiction. Nations are fiction. Human rights are fiction. Not false, but imagined. Stories that only work because enough people believe in them at the same time. The Roman Empire didn't hold together because of roads or legions. It held together because millions of people agreed, in their minds, that Rome was real and that its laws meant something. Think about that for a moment. The largest and most complex systems your species has ever built rest on collective belief. Not on stone, not on steel, on stories. And those stories, they weren't planned either. Take the calendar. You live your entire life by it. Your deadlines, your birthdays, your taxes, your seasons, all governed by a system invented by Julius Caesar in 45 BCE because the Roman calendar had become so inaccurate that the harvest festivals were happening in the wrong season. Caesar's solution was itself imperfect. It took another 1,600 years before Pope Gregory XIII corrected the error in 1582, and even then, different parts of the world refused to adopt it. Russia didn't switch to the Gregorian calendar until 1918. The time system you trust completely is a patchwork of ancient political compromises. So is your language, so is your money, so is your government. Here is the part that should stop you cold. Economist Jared Diamond, in his research on the geographic and environmental origins of modern inequality, showed that the civilizations that came to dominate the world didn't do so because of superior intelligence or drive. They did so because of wheat, because of cows, because of the orientation of a continent. Eurasia runs east to west, which means crops and animals could spread across similar climates relatively quickly. The Americas run north to south, cutting across radically different temperature zones, slowing the spread of agriculture by thousands of years. The civilizations that conquered and colonized the globe weren't fated to do so. They were positioned to do so. By geography, by luck. The gap between the conqueror and the conquered was not a gap in human potential. It was a gap in the random distribution of domesticable plants and animals across the surface of a spinning rock. Accident, all the way down. And this is where it gets truly strange. Because if civilization is an accident, then what does that say about you? Every belief you hold, every value you were raised with, every idea about what is normal or natural or obvious, all of it is the downstream consequence of contingent events that no one planned. You believe in individual rights? That concept was barely imaginable before the 17th century. You believe in romantic love as the basis of marriage? Medieval Europeans would have found that bizarre. Marriage was an economic and political institution. You believe in childhood as a protected stage of life, separate from the adult world? Historian Philippe Ariès documented that in medieval Europe, children were simply treated as small adults from the moment they could work. The idea of childhood innocence is modern, recent, invented. None of this makes these ideas wrong, but it should make you curious about where they came from, because the thoughts you think are self-evident, the ones that feel so obvious they barely seem like thoughts at all, those are the most historically contingent of all. The water you can't see because you're swimming in it. Now here is the counterintuitive twist. The fact that civilization is accidental doesn't make it fragile. It might make it stronger. Systems that emerge organically, that arise from millions of small decisions rather than one grand design, tend to be surprisingly resilient. They adapt. They absorb shocks. The economist Friedrich Hayek called this spontaneous order. The idea that complex functional systems can arise without anyone intending them. Language is spontaneous order. Markets are spontaneous order. Culture is spontaneous order. No one designed English. No one designed the social norms around how close you stand to a stranger. These systems evolved through use, through friction, through accident, and they work, often better than anything that was consciously planned. The Soviet Union tried to centrally plan its economy, to replace spontaneous order with deliberate design. The result was a system that could not adapt, could not respond to local conditions, could not incorporate the distributed knowledge of millions of individual people. It collapsed. Meanwhile, the chaotic, unplanned, accidental tangle of markets, cultures, and languages that makes up the rest of the world, messy and inefficient and wildly imperfect, has kept generating novelty and complexity for thousands of years. Accident isn't a flaw in the design. In many ways, accident is the design. And maybe that is the most important thing to sit with. You live inside a system so vast, so old, so layered with unintended consequences that no single mind could ever fully comprehend it. The civilization you inherited was not handed down to you as a finished product. It was handed down as a draft, an ongoing experiment. A structure that billions of people are still, right now, in the middle of making. Which means something else is also true. If it was built by accident, it can be changed by choice. The things that feel fixed, the structures, the norms, the systems, none of them were inevitable. None of them are permanent. They appeared because of specific conditions, specific moments, specific accidents. And different conditions, different moments, different choices can produce different results. Your ancestors didn't choose to start farming, but the world they started built eventually gave you the ability to look back at them and understand what they couldn't. That understanding, the ability to see the accident from the outside, is itself one of the strangest and most improbable things that evolution ever stumbled into. You didn't choose to be born into this world, but now that you're here, you have something your ancestors didn't. The full weight of the record. All those clay tablets, all those collapsed empires, all those accidental calendars and borrowed alphabets and inherited fictions. You can see what they could not. That none of it was inevitable. And if none of it was inevitable, then neither is whatever comes next. You didn't choose to be born into this world, but you might get to choose what this world becomes.